I've got a link up, and I put up a. All right, I hit go live. There we go. It's going. Okay. I hope people find it. Oops. All right. I hope people find it.
Fran Wilson found it.
Yes.
Okay.
Fran is in the chat. Hi, Fran.
Yeah, five people have found it. I am sorry, people, for the technical difficulties. I do not know what happened, but I hit go live and nothing happened. So when that happened, I left this. I hit end broadcast to restart it. Yeah, thinking that I could restart it. But when I hit end broadcast, go live was no longer an option, and I had to scrap it and completely restart it. So unfortunately, that caused us not only the delay, but I went back to go put a link for the new broadcast in the chat, and the chat is gone in the old broadcast because it was ended. So hopefully everyone will be able to find us. I did put a link up on Twitter, and that's where most people find me from, is Twitter anyway. So hopefully people will find their way over. And I see that 7 people have made it so far. Okay, let me try that introduction again and see if I can remember everything I said the first time, which was, hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us. For Black History Month, I wanted to do something, and I wanted to celebrate unsung heroes. And as far as I'm concerned, all Black people are unsung heroes in one way or another. And so I invited guests to come and talk about either people they know now or people from history, either people that they know personally or people that they've read about, just anybody that you think is a Black person that we should know about that we either don't, or maybe we do, but it's time to be reminded. So it's the floor is really open to talk about any Black people, their accomplishments, their goals, just whatever you want to talk about your favorite Black people. And joining me today, I have Aunt Jer.
Hello.
I have Godless Sewing.
How's it going?
Purple Rhymes with Orange.
Hello.
Cynthia McDonald.
Hello.
And Kitty the Atheist. And Kitty has something to reveal to us.
Oh, you're going to make me tell the story again. Okay. So you might notice that I'm missing quite a bit of hair. I was relaxing, sitting, had my headset on at my computer. My son comes up behind me. Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair. So I put my hair over my shoulder like I do. And he starts running his fingers through it. And then quick as a snake, he grabbed scissors off of my sewing station, which is right next to my computer, and came at them like they were little hedge clippers. And he gave me a bit of a haircut. And then I went and got it fixed. And the slick little guy, when I came home, I was like, what's different about mommy? And he looks me dead in the eye. Mommy is beautiful. And then when my mom asked the same question, he says, when she's like, what happened to mommy's hair? And he's like, I cut it. Well, why did you cut it? Mommy needed to go to the salon. How do you stay mad at that?
Oh, how's your son?
He is 6 and he's on the autism spectrum.
Okay.
So he doesn't fully understand consequences. Like, that's the best way that I can describe it. And Will can back me up on this.
I have a child that has ASD as well.
They don't seem to understand consequences. And like, as soon as he was out of the room, I just busted out laughing because I thought it was funny. Like, I was going to cut my hair off at the end of the pandemic anyway, and it's just hair. It grows back. But he did go into timeout, and he lost his iPad for like the whole day, and he was not happy about it. But, you got to teach him. You can't just let him get away with doing something like that. So it was an experience.
Would be real good if he goes to school and ends up going and cutting somebody's hair.
Right. Going forward, may I suggest a tignon?
Excellent idea.
My family keeps calling me Rapunzel, and I'm like, I hate you all so much.
They can't do it anymore.
Well, no, they still can. He was like, they were like, hey, he was just playing out the movie. He's seen Tangled. Her hair gets cut at the end. Spoiler warning. But no, he ended up cutting off like 16 and a half inches of hair from the longest part. So like literally almost 1.5 feet of hair.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a thing.
Wow.
It's a lot of hair.
Wow.
Mhm.
I'm still sore at my ex for getting me to cut mine. That was 15 years ago, and it never grew back half as long again.
Yikes.
Oh.
That's too bad. Well, anyway, getting back to our topic. So, Godless Sewing, you have an interesting story to share. I'm going to let you go ahead and go first.
Okay, good, because I am the annoying rags to riches story, so I should go first. So, there's someone in my family that has the exact same name as me who has earned a PhD researching my family. So I'm kind of usurping his research, and I'm going to condense it. And I'm going to present a couple pictures and a marriage certificate, but this is from it would be my great-grandmother, who was a born slave. She lived to be 96 years old. She died in 1960. That's her birth certificate from 1872. The beginning of her life, she was a product of basically the slave master and her mother. So because of her, I am related to every other black and white person in Clinton, South Carolina, and Savannah, Georgia. And the reason I know that is because in the 80s and 90s, we our family went and took blood tests, and we went and found out that we were related to all of these people that were complete polar opposite colors. So people that have my last name in the South, we probably are blood related. And I think that's something it's important to remember, because we other each other and we stand on separate sides and we say, oh, you're white, you're black, or you're this, and I think as an American, we're all kind of intertwined and interweaved, for better or for worse, And my father was kind of a success story. He came from Savannah, Georgia. He used to always brag about how, like, the plot of land that was given to his family was given by the Union Army. And the sad thing is that they're still there to this very day. Yamacraw Village, shout out Savannah, Georgia. They're still there to this very day. But the one positive thing is that people in my family, they came from bondage, but they went out in the world and made something of themselves. Not everybody. I come from a very large family on the black side of my family. But, my point is, a lot of, especially nowadays, we are standing on other sides like Hatfields and McCoys. And I quite literally am in the middle, kind of saying, like, as a person who is African American, I think it's time to find solutions instead of othering people and saying your people did this and your people did that. Because someone like me, I'm both people. And I try to stay positive, because it's easy to come from the negative side and say, hey, I came from slaves and I need this and this and this. And you know what? Even I'm speaking for myself, because I come from successful people, and I wouldn't be where I am without nepotism and without people that look like me helping me, So I have a little bit more of a positive story, because I've been helped by people. I've had positive experiences with black men helping me with my business, helping me expand my business. So I always try to just be positive, And I am my favorite black person, and my family, they are my favorite black people. So in honor of Black History Month, my father worked for NASA. I have family that's served in every war since the Civil War. I do. Junie knows I could go off. And that's one of the things. I always say, like, I am an American. I know nothing else. I've been overseas. I've been around the world, but I don't claim to be anything else except for American, but it's because of those people before me who identified as American because they wanted to be thought of more than just their skin color. I'm going to open it up because I could go on for days, but I just try to stay positive because it's easy to other people and get negative and hate people.
I mean, if we're gonna talk about people closer to us, I do want to give a shout out to my son's grandfather. He never got to meet him. In fact, I never got to meet him, but he immigrated to the U.S. from Guyana. He was half Afro-Guyanese, half Indo-Guyanese. And he became a U.S. citizen, joined the military so that he could sponsor family and bring them here. And had he not done that, come from, there to here, then he would have never had my partner. And then I would have never had my son. So thank you.
Absolutely.
But, I mean, it's amazing, people really working hard to make a better life for themselves. I don't know. I just wish that people didn't have to work so hard to succeed. I wish things were a bit more egalitarian. But
my thing is assimilation. That was pushed upon the generation of the people that I came from, and I'm not necessarily for that, but it's people who suffered so that I could be here. My dad's dad was a porter in Savannah, Georgia. He was this giant 6'7", just huge human being who was trashed every day by white people, belittled because he towered over people. He died of lung cancer because he internalized it. And my dad said he would just come home and smoke 1 million cigarettes, So there are people who suffered and died and didn't say anything, that needs to be highlighted as well. But like I said, I'm trying to be positive because for as many good stories, I have 1 million bad ones,
And that's unfortunately how it goes. I mean, immigrants are what built this country, regardless of skin color. But if you were not a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant male, then you didn't really get to reap the benefits of the hard work that people of all races, brought in. But especially the blacks, because they didn't have a choice. A lot of the other immigrants, they chose to come here. And, the Asians that built the railroads and,
Richard Pryor kind of said it the best. We built everything. East of Mississippi, everything was built by, if it's old, it was built by a black person.
Exactly.
If it's over 100 years old, it was built by a black person.
Yeah. I was going to say, as much as I'm a child of an immigrant. So, but, yes, immigrants contributed to the building of this country, but the foundation of the building of this country was slavery. And that's definitely black folk. And it's kind of interesting, even though I was going to go a whole other way with ours. And I know I'll get back to it, but, even with my own personal family story, I did a bit of a genealogy comb through to see where did I come from. I know that I heard stories a lot growing up about this, that person and that person, but never anything really concrete. And when I started to peer through some of my records, as far as the census is concerned, who am I related to and things of that nature, I found out about my great grandfather. And my great grandfather on my father's side was named James McDonald, and he was a World War I veteran. Awesome. And he once he fought in Europe, defending the Allies against Germany, and came back to the Red Summer of 1919. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that was tried as far as getting the family out is they were very much so part of the Great Migration. A few generations with my grandfather, which is my father's namesake, because my father's a junior, and him coming to Chicago first, and then my grandmother coming to Chicago, and then my sending from my father coming to Chicago, all within the 20s and the 30s. And then my father was the last one that came in the 40s. And then my father ended up becoming a veteran too of the Korean War. and had served for 8 years, was honorably discharged. And it's kind of interesting, Godless, that you talked about one of your relatives getting a plot of land from the Union Army, which was part of General Sherman's Order 15, General Order 15, the 40 acres and a mule, if you all heard about that. The majority of that, practically all of that land, went back to the slave owners, to the former slave owners. But there was a few Black people or freedmen that was actually able to keep their land. Very few. So when I hear like a story like that, that's a triumph, because that's not something that generally happened.
Yeah,
And
they're still there.
yeah.
Actually, we go there like every, we go to the family reunions and everything. It's a beautiful thing. Beautiful.
Yeah. And I was going to remark that my dad, when my mom was pregnant with my second oldest sister, they wanted to buy a house. And because that's part of the American dream, right? You buy a house, you gain wealth that way. That's what they tell you. So when he went to, so he decided that he was going to use his GI Bill in order for him to do it. And so went down to the VA's office, filled out like 10,684 papers in order for him to apply, and was denied and never told why. And came to find out that a lot of ex-service Black men were not granted the GI Bill. A lot of that was not granted to them until I would say the early 70s, after the Fair Housing Act of 1968 was signed into law. Matter of fact, that's actually how my parents ended up buying a house, was after that act was signed and getting an FHA loan finally. And they ended up and still was fought tooth and nail to get the FHA loan, because even though my father worked for the railroad and had a very good job at that time, the mortgage company wanted to deny him because of his income alone. And so my parents had to get a lawyer and say that you need to consider my mother's income too, even though she was off of work because she was pregnant with my sister. So it's a lot of these particular stories that's very much so in the discourse of Black Americans, all these particular time periods, and I oftentimes would hear some people remark that, with all these particular artificial barriers, I don't want to necessarily say miracle, but it's almost all dumbfounding that Black folk are still here. So I just wanted to point that out before I actually got into my people. So yeah, because I know other people got to go.
I know, I'm trying to stay quiet. I'm trying.
Well, no, I mean, but you bring up a really good point. I mean, redlining, it's the main systemic thing that kept generational wealth, like owning a home and passing it on to your children. That was how generational wealth was built. And that is why you had so many middle-class people made after World War II and the baby boom. It was because the government subsidized these things and allowed them to, build generational wealth. But people of color, especially Black people, were completely excluded from that, either, blatantly or more subtly, like where they just, they're like, oh, we'll just count one income and not both, red line districts where it's like, oh yeah, only Black people will be shown houses in this area, and then the white people get showed, the houses over here.
I still run into that. I still run into that to this very day. I said on Purple's stream last week, I had a stucco guy come to my house. I was in full conversation with the stucco guy, and he looks at me and he's like, "Oh, you're really cool. Where's Mr. Sewing?" He didn't think that I owned my house.
Wow.
But he was polite. He talked to me. He was like, "Oh, you're a cool guy, but where's the person that's on?" And I'm like, "I'm the guy. Go stucco my house."
Mm-hmm.
But it still happens to this very day. People they profile.
They do. I just read an article, and this was so crazy, that there was a family who wanted to sell their home, a Black family, and they got their their property appraised, and it was for a lower amount than what the house was really worth. So what they ended up doing was they asked a friend of theirs who happened to be white, can you give us family pictures of your family that we can put up, so that, you know, when the appraiser would come, they would think that the house was owned by a white family instead of a black one. And did you know that that the appraisal value went up over 50%?
Unfortunately, I can believe it.
I actually read that article.
Yeah, I was like,
Again,
no words.
again,
It's a gut punch. It really is.
I sell a lot of stuff online, and when I had my profile picture as myself, nobody bought anything from me. And I asked my ex-wife, I said, hey, let me put your picture up. And I had to give her a percentage, but I sold everything I was trying to sell. Everything. Because she was a brunette white woman. And people were willing to meet her. They were willing, like, after a while, she would just come pick up the stuff from my house.
Wow.
You know? Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's still, but I live in the suburbs, and I kind of just, I don't know. It's a weird thing. I'm from here, so I get a weird respect, but there is definitely an othering.
One of the things I did want to bring up as far as the struggle still going on is I have a friend of mine is a black woman in Portland, and the protests are still happening there. They had one just this last weekend, and she's been showing up at that every weekend. You know, so I think a lot of the country has already forgotten about this, but it's still happening, people. And this is something that's going to be in the history books, regardless of how it turns out.
You know, when I was younger, I used to get caught. I got caught up in a lot of rhetoric, and there's some. I used to get caught up in a lot of stuff like Louis Farrakhan and Brother Muhammad from England. And there's one thing that's true that they used to say is that black people, they would riot and then they would get what they want and then go to sleep. And then they go to sleep. And then it happens over and over and over again. You have to keep up with these things. You have to constantly keep up with your rights. I have a special needs son. If I just sent my son to school, they would let him wander around the hallways. I have to make sure there are proper people watching him. I have to make sure that people know what they're doing, you know? And I think we should treat our legislators like that as well. And the people that we bestow this magical power to, you know, that have so much say over what goes on and what our districts, you know, where our districts are, and just, you know, evil things like that.
I mean, as much as this is a good topic, you know, we're not going to get to everybody's people if we don't move that.
That's true. That is very true.
I'm trying.
Can I so is it possible, since like we are all atheists? Last time
yes, I was going to take you next, Cynthia.
Yeah, I said okay, cool. So like, since we're all atheists, you know, one of the things that I wanted to highlight in my little segment or what have you is black atheists that were very much so part of the social justice struggle that hardly anyone either mentions that they were atheists or agnostic, but was still very integral into pushing social justice for Black people. So I got a list. If y'all want to hear it, here it go. Okay, so so the first person that I wanted to highlight was James Baldwin. Now, James Baldwin was an American author. He did not actually say that he was an atheist, but he was very critical of the Black church. And he wrote a lot of great books. One of my favorites that I'm actually reading through right now is called The Fire Next Time. And he wrote this, and this book actually was published in 1963. And it describes how being in the pulpit was like being in the theater. He said, I was behind the scenes and I knew how the illusion worked. Baldwin never, and I said, you know, he never publicly declared his atheism, but was very critical of religion. One of his quotes was, if the concept of God had any validity or any use, he wrote, it can only be to make us larger, freer, and more loving. If God cannot do this, then it is time we got rid of him. I totally agree. So the next person that I wanted to highlight was W.E.B. Du Bois, who is actually the co-founder of the NAACP. And and I'm actually reading from an article from the Washington Post that actually talked about a lot of Black atheist activists. And a Columbia University professor, Manning Marballet, wrote that Du Bois' 1903's work, The Soul of Black Folk, helped to create an intellectual argument for the Black freedom struggle in the 20th century. Du Bois described himself as a free thinker and was sometimes critical of the Black church, which he said was too slow in supporting or promoting racial equity. And that's even true to this day. I think that like a lot of civil rights leaders that, call themselves civil rights, that's like who happens to have the moniker of Reverend or Reverend Doctor or what have you, are oftentimes too, and for my taste, too soft-spoken when it comes to a lot of these social justice issues. Next one I want to talk about was Lorraine Hansberry, who was a playwright and a journalist. Hansberry partly autobiographical play, which is very famous, A Raisin in the Sun, shocked Broadway audiences when the Black character declared, "God is just one idea I don't accept. It's just that I get so tired of him getting credit for all the things the human race achieves through its own stubborn effort. There simply is no God." So they were like a number 7 on the Dawkins scale, right? There is only man, and it's he who makes miracles. She actually worked with W.E.B. Du Bois and Paul Robeson, who I absolutely adore, on an African-American progressive newspaper, but her life was cut short at the age of 34 by cancer. Another person that, and this is probably my last one. Oh, no, 2 more. Sorry, 2 more, y'all.
Okay. Take your time.
Okay,
Take your time.
thank you. Okay, so the next one, and this guy is like stellar, Hubert Henry Harrison. He was an activist, an educator, and a writer. And Harrison promoted positive racial consciousness among African Americans and is credited with influencing Phillip Randolph and the godfather of Black nationalism, Marcus Garvey. Harrison proudly declared his atheism and wrote, "Show me a population that is deeply religious, and I will show you a servile population, content with whips and chains, content to eat the bread of sorrow and drink the waters of affliction." That was a bad man, I tell you. And then the next person, that would be my last person I want to highlight, is Phillip Randolph. Now, he was a labor organizer during the civil rights movement. And you know how oftentimes we would hear when it comes to civil rights leaders, who's the big 2? Somebody.
Malcolm X and Martin Luther King.
There you go. Okay. There you go. Thank you. And but this brother don't get enough credit for all the organizing that he actually has done. There will be no March on Washington without Phillip Randolph. So he was the founder of the Brotherhood of Sleepy Car Porters, and the first predominantly black which was the first predominantly Black union. He helped convince President Franklin Roosevelt to desegregate the military production factories during World War II and organized the 1963 March on Washington with Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. And in 1973, Randolph signed the Humanist Manifesto, a public declaration of humanist principles. He is reported to have said of prayer, "Our aim is to appeal to reason. Prayer is not one of our remedies. It depends on what one is praying for. We consider prayer nothing more than a fervent wish. Consequently, the merit and worth of a prayer depends upon what the fervent wish is." And see.
I want to jump in with one of mine, following up on that, and that's Bayard Rustin. Dr. King is usually credited for the March on Washington in August 1963, but it was Rustin who organized and strategized in the shadows. As a gay man who had controversial ties to communism, he was considered too much of a liability to be on the front lines of the movement. Nonetheless, he was considered to be one of the most brilliant minds and served his community tirelessly while pushing for more jobs and better wages. So that was one of mine. I just wanted to get it in there, to tie in with that.
Absolutely.
Nice.
Cynthia, you reminded me of something, but I'll save it for later.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll save it for later because I could go off. I'm taking notes.
I don't know if you saw, Cynthia, but Seraphim had a request that I put a list of your people in the description. And since we lost the description when I had to change over the broadcast, I'm going to redo the description after the broadcast. And if you'll send me a link on Twitter, I'll just copy and paste it into the description of this broadcast.
Okay, cool. I'll tweet you the article.
Okay, very good. Thanks.
Cool.
And Purple, would you? I'm sorry, Cynthia, were you finished? Did you have any more?
No. Go ahead, everybody else, please.
Okay. Purple, who do you have?
Well, one I wanted to kind of mention, most people have heard of the Tuskegee Airmen because they were the first black combat pilots. But something that most people don't think about is that they were far from being the first black troops that were in combat, and even more so, before any of the black troops were assigned combat roles, there were a lot of them serving as support roles. And my fiance's great uncle had been a mechanic on the aircraft in World War II.
Awesome.
And yeah, he was serving at a base in Britain during the Blitz.
Wow.
Wow.
That's interesting.
I actually knew one of my dad's friends was he was an older generation Navy man, and back then they literally would not let black people on the top of the ship, so he was in the bottom of the ship, but he was in Hawaii and Pearl Harbor. And one of the history always becomes like a movie. It's what we watch. Every time this man would tell the story, he would start crying. Every time he would start shaking. So we wouldn't ask him about it after a while, but these are real people who lived. You know?
My father was a World War II vet, and he never told us anything about what happened when he was there.
My father was in Vietnam, but I think part of he got massive therapy, so part of it was talking it out, and he told a lot of funny stories, because there were more negative stories, but he told a lot of just real human stories. He told me about a story. Long story short, they were in the Aleutian Islands. My dad came from Savannah, Georgia. And they sent him straight to Alaska because he was in the Navy. And him and these two other guys were on a boat, and they were on patrol, and they got lost. And they ended up on some weird island, and 9 dudes in skis came up, and they all pulled rifles out. And my dad was like, "Oh, we're on the wrong island. This is the end." The guy reached in his coat and pulled out a bottle of vodka, and he flat out told my father he had never seen a black person before.
Wow.
And they got wasted. And my dad said he woke back up. They were back at the base, and his commander was just spitting at him and screaming at him. They had exchanged hats. So my dad showed back up wearing a real USSR cap, drunk, stinking of vodka, and they were like, "I don't even want to know what happened." They were like, but it's stories like that. We're human beings. Not everybody wants to kill each other in war. We're human beings. They could have easily clipped out my father and the 2 people he was with. They got him drunk and sent him home. So
I think that was the first time that, being black actually saved you.
Yeah, exactly.
It wasn't from Americans, but Russians. So that should tell you something.
He said when he joined the military was the first time when he looked around. First, when he was in boot camp, all he saw were poor people. It was no longer black or white because everybody, they didn't want to be farm hands. because back then in Georgia, they were basically at school. They were training all the kids to be servants, farmhands, or go work in somebody's house. This was 1950s Georgia.
Right.
Let's be real. And so when his mom signed him up at 17 because she knew, he had no life living in Savannah, Georgia. So when he did join the military, it was one of those things that saved his life. I wouldn't join the military, but I'm from a different generation.
Right. I asked my dad, can I join the military? And he said, no daughter of mine will be allowed to go to the military. But he never really talked about why. But I kind of got like the secondhand information that, he did serve in the military during the 1950s. So, and he would kind of drop those Easter eggs about, how racist the organization was. Still is. I mean, it's just that, its policy says don't do it, but it still happens. But even like when it came to a lot of opportunity, especially for Black men coming from the South, that's what they did. They joined the military oftentimes in order for them to be able not to go into sharecropping.
I'm like I'm the only out of all my brothers, I'm the only one to not join the military and own a house. I'm the only one.
I mean, the military did provide at least a path towards upward mobility, even if you were denied at the end. But I mean, the chance at an education, home ownership.
Even today, for a lot of poor people, the military is their only chance to get an education.
And it's sad that, a system that basically profiteers off of war is the only way to get upward mobility.
Yeah, I agree. You know what? I'm one of those people that completely benefit from the people before me, and I'm grateful. But some of those sacrifices, if you ask people today to do them, it would be war. So I'm grateful for the people that suffered, so I could sit here in my Mormon neighborhood and walk around, do the cocky walk around my Mormon neighborhood, and no one say a word to me.
Jesus fucking Christ, Ox! Like, holy shit! I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I'm very sorry about that too.
That was one thing I wanted to talk about too. My dad's mother used to always tell him, like, when I pass, let the hatred pass with me, because she hated white people. But she would always tell my father, you don't have to. Because she had generational hate, and she would tell him all the time, like, go find something else. Because I'll tell you, when I went over to Europe, people were less racist than here in America. No one, people were nice to me. Open people I didn't even know would like help me find places, especially if I didn't speak the language. I met all kinds of weird people. Well,
back in I would say like the turn of the century, that is I would say from the turn of the century up to 50, 60 years, possibly even relevant today, Black entertainers actually relocating to Europe because they found it less stringent of racism there than they did here. Josephine Baker was a big one that relocated to France and decided to perform there because the racism in America was just too much.
After World War II as well. Yeah, many servicemen stayed in France.
Yeah,
many.
Yeah. I even remember like Quincy Jones. He did a stint in France too, because for that very reason.
Jimi Hendrix.
James Baldwin.
Was that Nina?
Yep.
Nina
James
Simone's
Baldwin
reason?
did. Yep.
Was that Nina Simone's reason for?
Yes. Nina Simone. You know what? I wish that I didn't really highlight her because I wasn't very sure about her beliefs or non-beliefs. But I knew that she learned how to play piano in church. But one of the other reasons why she ended up going and staying in Europe is because she was a Black radical activist. Like, she was not nonviolent. Matter of fact, that's one of the things that she told Dr. King. Like, she was going to perform at one of the rallies, and she came up to him and said, "I am not nonviolent."
Well, speaking of, not nonviolent, Annie Lee Cooper, the Selma, Alabama native, played a crucial part in the 1965 Selma voting rights movement. But it wasn't until Oprah played her in the 2014 Oscar-nominated film Selma that people really took notice of Cooper's activism. She's lauded for punching Alabama Sheriff Jim Clark in the face. Badass bitch.
Yeah.
But she really deserves to be celebrated for fighting to restore and protect voting rights.
Mm-hmm. Another person that can be put on that list too was Fannie Lou Hamer. Fannie Lou Hamer was a champion of voters' rights, and actually was threatened and even beaten up because of all the people in the South that she signed up to actually register them to vote. Even though that she was with them during the marches, like with her and Ella Baker, who was also integral in the civil rights movement as well. She was interviewed in the 1970s, and she talked about a lot of the riots that were going on at that particular time. That was like a rise of Black nationalism. And one of the things that she said, and I can remember when she said it because it was an echoing of what's happening today, was that, these young people, they gonna tear it up because they say that they can't have it, nobody can. And it was kind of like the same thing that we saw after, George Floyd passed away and was murdered on camera.
Absolutely.
And not necessarily having Derek Chauvin being arrested right away. It had to be, people damn near losing their minds during the rioting in order for somebody to pay attention. And it's kind of like these same things happen over and over again because of the lack of of justice that we're not seeing in our system.
And I don't think it's highlighted enough of the double standards in America.
Of course.
I don't think we talk about it enough to tell people, like, hey, there is a double standard. And when I say something like white privilege, it's not, and I'm not trying to insult you. I'm not trying to, I don't even say it in an angry way anymore. It's just to highlight that there is a double standard. No matter what economic ring you are, no matter where you're from, there is a double standard, and because Twitter is a trash fire, but I see arguments. I see these arguments all the time, and I'm like, I don't think people even understand what they're arguing about, because there's no defense on the other side. People have been oppressed, and now we're seeing equality, and the other side doesn't want it.
I do want to acknowledge the super sticker from Esther. Thank you very much, Esther, for the super chat sticker.
Thank you.
Go
Esther.
ahead, Keith.
But the thing is people, I am someone who benefits greatly from white privilege, and I hate it. I really do. I wish it wasn't a thing. But people that look like me, they think that lifting up people of color is somehow dropping them down. It's like, no, you're lifting them up to the same line. It's equality. It's egalitarianism. Same line. You're not losing anything unless you enjoy feeling like you're superior in some way to others. And then if that's the case, go fuck yourself. But we should be focused on evening the playing field a bit.
That brings me to a question that I have. And so having some Black people on the panel, we can get a couple of opinions. And I sometimes, when I go to a restaurant, want to pick up the check of a Black person in the restaurant, and we'll just look around at random. And I'm about to go ask for their check, but then I think, the reason I want to do this is because I have had and I have benefited from white privilege. And so I would like to pay it back. But I don't want to come across as being condescending.
Mm-hmm.
And and so I'm so afraid of offending them at being condescending and, making them feel like, I'm trying to white knight you. I'm trying to,
You know, I'll tell you from personal experience, you should find an organization in your area that helps people of color and you know, donate to them and help them.
Okay.
Because I guarantee you, if you find an organization, they're going to be like, hey, we need basic needs, or hey, we'll love your donations, you know, because I work with an organization that helps homeless people, and like, you know, we always need help from people. We always need donations and help, you know. So just find a reputable organization that actually helps people, that actually affects, you know, actually finds the people affected. Because walking up to you don't know who you're walking up to nowadays, and people are easily offended. And there is, you know, you live in Alabama, Granny. There is still some racial tension there.
I live very close to Coleman, Alabama.
Oh.
I don't know if you know about Coleman, but Coleman is still so racist that there are some people that pass out racist literature for Halloween.
Wow.
That's disgusting. That's absolutely disgusting.
I wanted to kind of just take Godless's point a little step further, and one of the things that I tell white people across the board is that, you know, the best empathy is to champion policy. I'm going to say that one more time. The best empathy is to champion policy. Dr. King said it best. You can't legislate behavior, but he said you can't legislate morality, but you can regulate behavior. And oftentimes what we have seen in society is that when policies change, eventually society changes. A good example is Asian people. Now, remember during the late 19th century, early 20th century, there was, you know, Chinese people that were here that was building the Pacific Railroad. Really? I was going in. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I thought I put this on silent. My bad. And I hope I don't lose my point, because I had a good one. Okay, here we go. Point. Now, remember the Chinese Exclusionary Act. Okay. Now, once that policy was rolled back, you know, you saw, and then also there was the Japanese Americans that were interned during World War II. I want to say for like, what was it, like basically during the whole term of the war.
There's a camp right up from my house. There's a torn down old internment camp in the hills by my house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but one of the things that happened was a rolling back of the Chinese Exclusion Act, and then you had in the 1980s, what's his name, Ronald Reagan signed in, but he signed into law a reparations package for Japanese Americans or their descendants who were interned during World War II. And one of the things that we also seen is, like, especially after the 1965 Immigration Act be revamped, that we saw more, more people coming in from different countries who especially who were more educated. And that happened to be oftentimes, the Asian population. So as time went on and a population kind of got renewed and policies started to come forward, you saw a less racist action against a group of people. So, but one of the things, and I remember, this is something that Rod Serling said, and I love Rod Serling, and I love The Twilight Zone. I didn't realize how much I loved The Twilight Zone until I just started watching it until I was an adult, and I was like, damn, this is a good show. But regardless, he said on an interview when he talked about race in America, he said that oftentimes different groups of people, like the Mexican Americans or other groups of people, would find some way to kind of assimilate, per se, inside the American culture, but not the Negro, because there's always been a stigmata on the Negro race because of the starting point of what it meant to be Negro in America. I know that our names have changed so much since then. But he had a point. And the thing about it is that we never really got a proper transformative policy to change Black American position in America. We still have an exorbitant amount of Black folk in America that's in poverty. Only 2.6% of African Americans hold wealth in this nation.
Mm-hmm.
And we're only 13% of the population. So we don't even hold the wealth to actually just be compensatory to, to who is here. And there was an article that was written in Black Enterprise that mentioned that Black people in America are on trajectory to be at zero wealth by 2053.
You're kidding.
I am not. And we already can mention that number most likely has been sped up because of COVID.
Absolutely.
41% of Black businesses have been lost during the pandemic and more than likely are not coming back.
And here in Los Angeles County, people have been fed and told so many lies. People are willingly not taking the vaccine. So the numbers are just through the roof of African Americans that are refusing to take it. And there's already the factor of exclusion.
Mm-hmm.
And, so it's scary trying to get real information out here right now.
And even mentioning Los Angeles with such a high population of homeless people across the nation, over 40% of the homeless individual population is African American. Over 50% of homeless families are African American. So the only thing that's really going to change any of this is policy from the top down, and it has to be something that is to the point where it changes the wealth gap, because it's a chasm.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that can be said about white supremacy and white privilege, and I'm not talking about skin color, I'm talking about a system, is that this particular system favors a group of people to actually have the semblance of wealth and another not, and who oftentimes is closer to wealth is the one who gets privileged, and so that's one of the things that I'm hoping that any conversation can have when it comes to Black history is not only just think about all the things that African Americans have contributed to society here, but what can we do as a nation, as a nation, to change it so it's more equitable to the people who were brought here as the economic floor for America in the first place?
Absolutely. And even right now, sorry, go ahead.
No, you started first, so go ahead.
I was gonna. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I was, go ahead and make your comment, then Kitty comment, and then we need to get to Aunt Jer.
Let's go to Aunt Jer. I was about to go off about Windrush in the UK. Okay. So it's okay.
Okay, Aunt Jer, who do you have for us?
Okay. I have notes.
Notes are great.
I have Shirley Chisholm. And most of my information is based off of the documentary about her called Unbought and Unbossed. Highly recommend it, because a lot of her awesomeness is in her body language. So you have to see it, like when people are saying stuff to her, and just the way she holds herself, she's like, She is just like, you cannot tell me no. She ran for president in 1972. She was...
Oh no.
No.
I think we lost her.
No.
She probably had some internet issues, and I'm sure she'll be back, and we'll let her finish when she gets back. In the meantime, I'm going to let Will. Oh wait, here she is. Here she is. We lost you, Aunt Jer. She ran for president in 1972.
Okay. I'm back.
Yep.
Okay. What was the last thing you heard?
She
President.
ran for president. Did you say 1972?
1972.
I don't remember her being one of the in the primary.
Yeah, she was a congresswoman at the time, and she fought to be in the primary. She trying to see where I want to start. She during the primaries, people kept trying to get her to drop out because she was, you know how they say when someone who doesn't really have a chance, they keep saying you're drawing the votes away from somebody else. The on the conservative to liberal spectrum, there wasn't much difference between her and McGovern. And people were saying, why is she running? She's trying to make it harder for him to win. And John Lindsay, another of the candidates, had said to her, "Shirley, you are cutting me out of the race. You are ahead of me. I want you to step back." And her response was, "No, my time has come." And it was just this whole thing. Nobody was going to tell her, like, you don't really have a chance. So you might as well just quit because, you're kind of ruining it for everybody else. She was just like, "No, I'm running for president." She was the first woman to appear in a U.S. presidential debate. And during that debate, the interviewer said to her, "If your own candidacy for the top spot should fail, would you actively seek to be on the ticket? Are you now saying that you think you could serve as vice president of the United States, strengthening the ticket?" And this is one of those moments where, like, you have to see her body language, because while he's asking the question, her body language is just saying, "You are not asking me what I think you're asking me." Her response was, "I could serve as president of this country, believe it or not. That's why I'm running." She was not gonna. She would not be intimidated or manipulated or talked down to. She demanded her spot. In fact, one of the quotes, I don't have it written down, but she said, "If you're not given a seat at the table, bring a folding chair." She was just like, "Do it." She had 3 confirmed threats on her life during the primaries. Yeah, they were saying she's drawing votes away from McGovern. She's going to cost McGovern the nomination. And what happened was, in the primaries, one of her delegates kind of stabbed her in the back and went over to McGovern, and that's kind of where her campaign ended. But she refused to step down just because she supposedly didn't have a chance. She's like, "No, I'm running. You don't get it. I'm running for president. I'm, not here, just because I want to party with y'all. I'm running for president." Let's see. Another quote of hers was, "If you can't support me or you can't endorse me, get out of my way. You do your thing and let me do mine." And yes, Granny.
Well, in 1972, people were still of the opinion that, for the most part, women shouldn't even be out of the house working. That was still, it was
Yeah.
still pretty much the norm that women were home and only the men were out working. And even when Reagan ran in 1980, one of the things he ran on was, I'm going to make wages high enough for men so women can stay home. They were still touting the ideal as women should be staying home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she was having none of it.
One of the things that surprises me so much is I remember the primaries of 1972. Although what I remember primarily from it was there was a record made, and it was a comedy record called Convention 72, where they took a bunch of clips from different songs and attributed them as comments in response to questions being posed to the candidates. And she was not one of the candidates. Although by the time of the convention, they probably had eliminated her, and that's probably why I don't remember her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she just a couple of milestones. She was in 1968. She was the first Black Congresswoman. She served 7 terms, and in 1983 she retired. She was the first Black candidate for a major party's nomination for president.
Awesome.
She was the first woman to run for the Democratic Party's nomination. And despite all that, she said that she doesn't want to be remembered for that. She wants to be remembered. She said, I want to be remembered as a woman who fought for change in the 20th century. That's it. Because her whole thing
Very
was
good.
just fighting the fight. And
Mhm.
that's, if you watch her body language, that's why I was referring. They didn't have this phrase back then, but I think if they did, they would have called her Zero Fucks Chisholm. Because she had zero fucks to give. She had 0 fucks to give. She was not having it. She was not going to be intimidated or manipulated. She was like, no, I'm doing this. So F y'all.
I'm endeavoring to put that with my name. 0 fucks, Cynthia.
You want to be
I have a quick question.
You want Cynthia Zero Fucks McDonald?
Yes.
I have a quick question for the panel. What do you guys think about the the death grip that Christianity has on the African American community?
Oh my God, I can go. That's a whole other show,
exactly.
Godless. That's a whole other show.
Because
you got another 2 hours to go.
You should hear what, because I have family in Savannah, Georgia, South Carolina, and in Chicago, and you should hear what people say to me when they find out that I'm an atheist. Some of it's like the old Ken Ham arguments, and a lot of it is just like, it's just perpetuated fear,
Yeah.
and it's sad. It's generational.
I'm going to quote my partner on this one when I think about the death grip of the church of Christianity on Black folk at large, is to keep. You all remember this video? I think that John Oliver played it on his show about this young lady who said when they were she was commentating on the protests and the riots during the summer, and she said the one thing that you should be lucky about is that Black people are searching for equality and not revenge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And one of the things, and I have no data to back this up, this pure observation and conjecture, is that one of the reasons why you don't see Black people in large groves storming the Capitol is because, well, according to the Pew Research, almost 80% of the Black American population declares to be Christian. And less than 1% declare atheism. Non-religious is about 18%. They the ones who say, I'm spiritual. I don't know what that means. but whatever.
neither do I.
Uh,
I'll never know what
That's
that
neither
means.
here nor there. But one of the things that and I don't know, Godless, did you ever watch Good Times growing up?
Of course I did.
Okay, cool.
Fell in
You
love with
remember-
Janet.
Do you remember that one episode where JJ painted a picture of the black Jesus that looked like Ned the Wino?
Yes, I did.
And how the mother got so upset because she had a picture of white Jesus on her
Mhm.
wall.
Mhm.
And she kept on saying, I don't know who this person is, but the only Jesus I know is white.
Mm.
And oftentimes I feel like this dulling of really fighting for what we should have in this country is because of white Jesus.
Mhm.
So oftentimes that's what I feel the grip is. Like, dull the black folk, give them white Jesus. And I feel that that's been the biggest con game on our group that
And
has
Reverend.
lasted for but Reverend just perpetuates said a mindset or vice
Mhm.
grip of white Jesus.
Very much so.
There was this documentary, it's on Prime. I forgot exactly what it was called, but it was talking about white iconography. And they were talking about how oftentimes these particular statues and idea of what it means to be American, or even like Christian American, is very much so wrapped into the notion of white Jesus.
Mhm.
And even how that has even played on even how we even look at ourselves. It always has to be in the guise of this particular icon that has been kind of like doting over us for centuries. And I personally don't necessarily feel that, even though like I always talk about policy, there needs to be an internal structuring of our mentality as a people as well. And one of the things that that's why I love I love working with different organizations like the ACA, and I'm hoping that I can even work with the Black non-believers even more, is to separate more of our people away from this, from this iconography and this cleaving to church, because I feel like a lot of that drives fear and even dulls our inward potential to really see ourselves like, more than what we usually do because of this icons that's in our lives.
To assimilation, it brings on fear and internalized racism. So people are attempting to assimilate. They're going to church, they're doing these things, and they have their head down. And that's part of the problem too, not realizing that policy is being made against them, So it's a all of us kind of problem.
Mm.
I mean, it honestly seems like one of the best things that we can do to honor the great Black people that got us to this point is to fight for a living wage, to fight for more money being pumped into education, to better educate, especially in underprivileged and underserved schools, and to fight to fully reinstate the Voting Rights Act so that gerrymandered districts don't strip Black people of their vote and their voice. And it's really shitty the way they carve out districts to try to suppress the minority vote.
It's unreal. It's unreal.
Like, the Electoral College also needs to go. That was literally a compromise with slave states.
Yep.
Seriously. That was so that slave states would have power because, Black people didn't count as much of a person as a white person did. So that shit needs to go. And I mean, what I try to do, like, I'm a mouthy bitch sometimes, but I do try to speak out and advocate for things that would actually have a real substantial impact on not just the Black people that I know that are, my friends, but to actually help systemically, because we have a systemic problem of, really, there's no other word to say it but racism. We have systemic racism, and it is suppressing and keeping people of color, and Black people, it seems, especially down. And the best thing that somebody that looks like me, I feel I can do, is to be a vocal, ardent supporter for the policy changes that will better affect the lives of all Black people in the United States, not just, a few people here or there that I might be able to help out on the micro scale. I think more macro.
One more thing, white folk out there, it would be really great if you also advocate for reparations. All right.
Yeah. I just think that that's a steeper hill to climb. I absolutely do believe that reparations are due, but I think that baby steps,
we're still decolonizing the world right now.
I mean, it's one of those things.
Well, I will say this. Tomorrow at 10 a.m., there is going to be a House subcommittee hearing on H.R. 40. H.R. 40 is the bill that John Conyers introduced for 30 years to put together a commission on the study of reparations. Now, H.R. 40 itself, in its present state, is a highly flawed bill. However, I am hopeful that because this conversation is actually coming forward, that there could be a markup session to actually get this bill together so that it can be introduced to the House in a holistic form and possibly voted on.
Is that the same? Sorry, dumb question. Is that the same bill from '92? I think
it has been revised.
Okay.
Actually, John Conyers started to introduce it in 1987 after Japanese reparations were signed into law.
Okay.
Yeah. So now this is the first. I would say that the past couple of years is the first time that there has been an actual serious conversation about reparations. It's always been kind of like meh, And then in 2008, 2009, Congress issued an apology for slavery, but that's it. And the thing about it is that, all those numbers that I was talking about previously about the 2.6% per wealth that Black people have versus white people at 90% wealth, and the racial wealth cap, homelessness being very high in our group, and other under resources. I mean, the list is endless when it comes to economics despair. And so the thing about it is that, as you mentioned before, Kitty, with systemic racism, outlier from the legacy of slavery has been very much so a yoke that has been the depressing factor. And even Dr. King said that it's going to take a massive influx of capital in the Black community in order for this to change. And so that's why, it's not something that can't be done. It does need to be, thought of and implemented in a thoughtful way that actually addresses a lot of the socioeconomic issues that Black Americans face to this day. It's not just, I'm just going to give you a check and Black people be along your way. It's not. People, I promise you, if reparations get signed into law properly, it's not going to be a Dave Chappelle skit. I promise you it won't.
I was hoping no one brought that up. I was hoping
it will not. I promise you it will not. So I mean, so that and as much as I believe in things like universal health care, and I believe in a living wage, and even UBI, I support all those things. But that's going to help. But because we're so far back, we need more. And it's kind of like we have to address these particular issues that affects certain groups because of historical issues that affected this certain group, so that's why I'm saying, if you can holler at me.
No,
I got some paperwork if you want to write.
I said, I absolutely do believe reparations are due. I mean, Black people were literally removed from their homes, their continent, fucking packed in like sardines, very high death rate on the travel over here, and then they were treated as little more than work animals for hundreds of years. Like it is absolutely abhorrent. The only reason, I say like it is a very divisive topic, and my thought process for focusing on living wage, more money to education, and especially focused on, inner city schools, and reestablishing, and rebuffing the Voting Rights Act that has been gutted over the past several years, is because that would at least be enough to try to get their heads above water. And then, once they're no longer drowning, we can talk about, making sure that, it's completely evened out. Because I feel like if you just look, Mitch McConnell, he did a 20-minute speech on how Trump absolutely was guilty of everything he was impeached for, but then weaseled out of actually, voting to convict him because of a situation that he set up. And I feel like because like it is such a divisive topic, that if it's not taken in baby steps where we try to improve their situations as much as possible with things that are more palatable to a wider array of politicians, that I feel like it would be doomed to fail. And I would rather get some help to those communities than no help. I mean, Conyers has been trying for decades.
Well, I will say this, and then I will say this as far as like, palatable and things of that nature. Well, as far as like, palatable goes, like, policy leaders don't go that way. It's usually like, we got to do it or not. But as far as like, support, I will also say this as well about HR 40 specifically. It has 173 co-sponsors right now. That's the most that it had ever in life. So, that's why I would say I'm way more hopeful about this particular policy actually becoming a reality than ever. But in actuality, America can do both. America, you can walk and chew gum.
Exactly. We can do it all across the board.
You can.
As someone who works with and is in the affected community, go ahead, Granny, go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask Kitty, you've had a chance to slip in a couple of yours in between some others, but did you finish all that you wanted to say?
I mean, there were a few others that I had wanted to add, but, as the, whitest person on the panel, I figured I'd take a little bit of a backseat and let others speak. But one of my absolute favorites is actually Bessie Coleman. Like she was a badass bitch, and Amelia Earhart, like she beat out Amelia Earhart for a lot of stuff, and she actually trained and learned to fly in France, which it goes back to the point earlier of a lot of Black people staying in Europe where they didn't have to deal with the oppression of the racist culture of this country. Oh goodness, where was the other one? Sorry, I had my list here, but there was a whole bunch, and I'm trying to find the couple that I really cared about. Jane Bolin, a pioneer in law. Jane Bolin was the first Black woman to attend Yale Law School in 1931. In 1939, she became the first Black female judge in the United States, where she served for 10 years. One of her significant contributions throughout her career was working with private employers to hire people based on their skills, as opposed to discriminating against them because of their color or because of their race. She also served on the boards of the NAACP, Child Welfare League of America, and the Neighborhood Children's Center. And then there was one other one. Ruby Bridges. Bridges probably had no idea the bold act she committed in 1960 would set off a chain reaction leading to the integration of schools in the South. She was just 6 years old when she became the first African-American student to attend William Frantz Elementary School in Louisiana at the height of desegregation. She is now the chair of the Ruby Bridges Foundation, which was formed in 1999 to promote the values of tolerance, respect, and appreciation of all differences. So yeah, just like a lot of women of color, were on my list, but also a gay man with questionable communist ties, because, you know, I want to represent like the broad spectrum
Absolutely.
that there is.
Well, the person that I brought is not American, because I went for any Black people, not just Black Americans. And I got it from this book that my daughter gave to me for Mother's Day, Tough Mothers, which features just tough women from history. And the one that I was going to pick was Molly Craig. Molly Craig is an Aborigine of Australia. And they made a movie about her life, Walk the Rabbit Fence. And what I have here is, in the 1930s in Australia, some had the crazy idea about Aboriginal people. One of the most dangerous of these was a sanity-bereft idea to kidnap all mixed-race Aboriginal children and raise them in concentration camps. The logic was, because the Aboriginal tribes would give these kids a hard time for their skin color, and because Aboriginal tribes were undoubtedly going to die out, the only moral thing to do was to forcibly wrench children from their mother's arms, re-educate them in youth prison camps, train them as domestic servants, and then send them out. 14-year-old Molly was one of those who was kidnapped, except that she escaped, and she was able to walk home, but she was recaptured, and she escaped again, and the second time she was able to carry back her younger sister, who was a toddler at the time, and she walked all the way home, which was like several hundred miles, in order to bring her sister home.
Wow.
It wasn't just Australia that did that. Canada and the United States also had re-education camps for their indigenous peoples to try to Anglicanize them and, you know, divest them of their heathen ways. It's fucking disgusting.
Thanks, Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
It goes right back to my point of the death grip it has, not just on African Americans, or right now what's going on in Africa.
Yeah.
It is insane.
We need Esther for that conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
Seriously.
About a year ago, and you know, I had a very positive look at my dad. So I hung out with my dad when later in life. We used to watch Nigerian television, so we saw this coming. But over the past 6 or 7 years, it's become more prevalent, and now everybody is using. It's insane to see what's happening in Africa right now. It's Christianity is a prison with no guards.
Yeah,
it has set rules. They just tell people what to do.
Yeah.
It still boggles my mind how many Black people in the United States are such devout Christians. Like, it is literally the religion of your oppressor that was forced upon you.
That's a whole other stream too. That's a 3-hour.
Completely erase your culture and your identity.
Kitty, that's a whole nother show. Gigi, we're gonna let you handle that.
Yeah, that's something that had always baffled me until I was with my fiance.
Yeah, it
is
baffling.
I almost got in a fist fight with a Black Hebrew Israelite in downtown LA because I asked him the very question. I said, "Why do you believe in any religion? In any religion, like it's just more slavery." And then the conversation just went downhill. It went downhill from there.
Yeah, I have a rule when I see a Black Hebrew Israelite. Walk the other way.
You know what? It's my fault because I'm into clothes. I'm into fashion. I commented on how crummy his smock was. I said, "Brother, I can make you a way better one." And the conversation just went downhill.
Well, they're looking with the bad smock. Will, come on.
They're looking like junior high pirates, like they're putting on a play or something. They look bad. If you're gonna do something, at least look good while you're doing it.
Right?
Yeah.
But no, honestly, I first started thinking about that back many years ago. And this was I wasn't fully an atheist yet, but I was I was pagan at the time. It's funny, one day, like, I found out I was an atheist long after I stopped believing in gods. I didn't know what the word meant. It wasn't until I met another atheist that was like, oh yeah, I'm an atheist. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? So I go look it up. It's like, oh, don't believe in God. Okay, yeah, so I'm an atheist. That's how I found out. But I had a conversation with a woman that I worked with. Yeah, exactly. But I had a conversation with a woman that I worked with, and she was a Black woman, lovely, lovely woman. But like, I did kind of internally cringe, and like, I don't like judging people, but after the conversation we had, like, I did have a different opinion on her, and it was about, you know, heaven and hell. And she basically was, you know, asking me why I left Christianity, kind of thing. And I was like, you know, it was the concept of heaven. Like, if I am in heaven and my child is burning in hell, it will not be paradise for me. So I would either have to not know that they're there, you know, so no memories, then what was the point of living my life? Have, you know, or have a fake version of my child in heaven, which I'd rather an ugly truth than a beautiful lie. And this woman looked me dead in the eye and said, well, if my child is burning in hell, they did something to get there. That's not going to ruin my paradise. I'm like,
Wow.
You know,
like,
I always say
there were no words.
Wow.
I always say that brainwashing isn't real, but people can really convince themselves of some crazy stuff.
Well,
You know.
what did Chris Rock say? He said, if you're Black and a Christian, you got a short memory.
Yeah, exactly. I always ask people that. Like,
Well,
sorry,
we've
go
been
ahead,
going for an hour and 24 minutes now, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. First, I'm going to give everyone a chance to express any final thoughts that they want on the subject, and then I'll come back around and let everyone shill for anything that they might want to shill for. And Sewing, we'll start with you.
There's too much to say. Be nice, wear a mask, you know, don't be a dick. Treat people with treat people with respect.
Okay, Kitty.
I will be on, you know, what Will said, you know, wash your hands, wear a mask, socially distance, and all that. He stole my line.
I did.
But Will, I believe, is still, you and Jen are doing the WTF show on Thursday. I will be on for that. And I know Jen has a project in the works that she wanted me involved in. I guess she just got busy because I think she had said she wanted to do it this week, but it probably got pushed back. So keep your eyes out for that on Jen's channel. It's going to be heavy, so maybe bring some wine. Aside from that, aside from that,
We know.
be good, you know,
Aunt Jer.
do what you can to, you know, help out those people that have been oppressed. Celebrate the victories and don't let them get overwritten or omitted from the history books. Like the fact that I was in my 20s when I found out about Black Wall Street and Rosewood, like that's horrifying to think about. Like we cannot let the sorrows and the achievements and accomplishments of Black Americans, you know, be omitted from the history books. So learn what you can, do your research, and, you know, do what you can to bring that knowledge to others, because the more people that know, you know, the more maybe we can help, you know, change the world a little bit, or at least the country, to make it a little bit better. If people, you know, have a better idea of like where we've come from and how horrible it was and how bad it still is for a large segment of the population that don't look like me. So aside from that, be good, you know, be safe, be well, and I will toss it off to the next person.
Okay, Cynthia.
This is just final thoughts, not necessarily plugging, right?
Right, just final thoughts. We'll get to plugging in just a minute.
Gotcha. So like I have said this on several streams, especially in February, that Black History Month is not just Black history, it's American history. The reason why America is because of Black people. And we enjoy a lot of the contributions of these Americans every day. However, they don't get credit for it. We don't get credit for it. And And I would even say for myself, that there was, even though I went to a predominantly Black school and I had, mostly Black teachers, that a majority of information that I've learned when it comes to history was something that was garnered in my adulthood, and and that should not be the case, So I would definitely tell people to really keep that in mind when it comes to when we're celebrating, Black History Month, to really equate it to what made America great. And also as far as like I will repeat this again to people who oftentimes say like, yeah, what Black folk go through in the nation. I mean, like, any downtrodden a group of people go through is egregious, it's horrible, and it needs to change. The way that changes is engaging on a political advocacy. Support political advocacy groups that are actively trying to change policies so that people's lives are better. Look up different policies that are going forward that's actually actively trying to, be very specific on groups to help, do things like close the racial wealth gap. Learn more about HR 40. Like I said, it's a very flawed bill. It is very flawed. However, I know that I've been working on with the advocacy group to put forth necessary edits in order before it goes to the House floor. You can please research these particular things, and when I plug myself, get at me, and possibly we can even talk more about how you can support initiatives in order to make people's lives better.
Okay, Purple.
Yeah, I had a list of some Black inventors that I didn't get a chance to get to, so I guess people have to come to my chat tomorrow for those. But
did we not get to you, Purple?
I don't think we did.
Well, briefly, and then we got carried on to other things. So it's okay. We got some important things covered.
I am so sorry.
But
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, one other thing I want to throw out there.
That is my fault, and I am so sorry.
Oh no, it's fine. That like Kitty said, I'm not really in a position to speak a lot about the Black position here, so I was letting it go to the people who know more about it. But
well,
one of the things I did want to put out was the idea that Juneteenth should get recognized as a national holiday.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Aunt Jer.
So I turned the page in my notebook and I realized there was a couple of more notes, but they are appropriate for closing thoughts. And I did say before, watch the documentary Unbought and Unbossed and watch her body language. I think it's inspiring because she is just zero fucks Chisholm. But the thing that I turned the page and found was a quote from her, and she said, "If you understand power, you will understand what it is I am trying to put together."
That's good. That's real good.
Mm-hmm. I'm
Wow.
going to use that one myself now.
Yeah. I love that one. I saw on the last page. I don't know why I missed it, but it was good for a closing thought.
Yes, it was. That was a good closing thought. And on that, we will now move to anything people might want to show for. And Godless Sewing, we will start again with you.
All right. So, this Thursday, we have the WTF stream. Definitely look out for that. And today, by some mathematical absurdity, I finally started putting content on my channel. So go subscribe to Godless Sewing. There's going to be a bunch of videos about me making vests and things like that. But I put up this stuff with Jen and I, and just in a just a quick video I made like a year ago. I forgot about it. So definitely go subscribe to Godless Sewing. I finally got off my duff and did something about it. So here we are.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I
And
didn't even know that you now had a channel. I'll have to go subscribe.
And I will be on Purple's probably tomorrow, and I won't talk as much because I want to hear what he has to say. So.
Okay. Kitty.
Well, I was trying to allow more, like I said earlier, more screen time and voice time for the others, which is why I kind of wrapped my closing comments along with my shilling all together. So I'm good.
Okay.
Moving on.
Okay. Cynthia.
This is why I ask questions. I will. So like last week, if you all didn't get a chance to see the nonprofits, which is on the nonprofits channel, I was on there and we were talking about nonprofit stuff, and I did a little singing. So if you want to check that out, please do. I am also recording with them tomorrow, so I believe that particular show will be up on Sunday. I also have another show that is on hiatus, but we'll be coming back hopefully fairly soon, called The 13%, where we talk about political issues that affect the African American group, and also I do have a channel, but most of the stuff that's on my channel is mostly about my my health journey and my music. So and I also write a blog called ADOS Health and Wellness and .com, which is a blog that talks about the social determinants of health that affects African Americans that descended from chattel slavery. And it's usually the easiest thing to kind of just check out all my stuff is at Linktree. My handle at Linktree is CamGlamming, CamGlamming. And I'm done shilling. Thank you again, Godless Granny, for having me on.
Thank you for coming. Purple, what do you have coming up?
Well, in about 15 hours, I'll just be doing my regular afternoon chat. And then I do another one Thursdays at midnight going into Friday morning. That's really it for me this week.
Okay. Aunt Jer, do you have anything you want to show for?
Yeah, I have Twitter, Aunt Jer, and I put a video up on my YouTube channel, so there's one thing to watch.
Awesome.
Okay, very good. And I recently put out a short video honoring Dorothy Butler Gilliam, who was the first Black woman journalist at the Washington Post, and talked a little bit about how she covered the desegregation of the public school system of the Little Rock Nine, and also James Meredith desegregating the University of Mississippi. The video I have coming out this week is a response to John MacArthur on the COVID vaccine, where he gives some absolutely ridiculous health advice. And I got my brother, who is a registered pharmacist, to help me with that video. And there's some really good information in that about what's in the vaccine, talking about the different types of vaccines. So that there's some good information in that. And also, I have been working with Atheist Edge on a collab project. And if you've seen any of the videos that he's been putting out, it's 666 things that your religious teacher never taught you. And he's divided it up among a number of different atheists to do different pieces too. And then he's editing those pieces together. And I'm featured in a few of those.
Nice.
Yeah, I've showed up in a couple of those myself.
Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome.
Nice.
That's so cool.
That is cool.
And with that, everyone, stay safe, wear a mask. Like Kitty says, I've kind of borrowed your lines too, Kitty.
It's okay, as long as it
Double
gets
mask.
out there. As long as it gets out there, that's all that matters. Because
Double
we don't want
mask.
COVID getting out there anymore.
Can I say
I'm ready to
one
be
thing?
done with this.
Can I say one thing about the vaccine?
Sure.
I had my second shot and I'm still alive. if and I would definitely say this as far as an encouragement for people to take a vaccine. Before you do, please have a conversation with your personal care provider. But if your physiology is up to it and you are less prevalent to anaphylaxis, please take the vaccine. Thank you.
Okay. And live your life. Bye-bye.
Bye.